Good evening and welcome to Mindful Life 245. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 23rd, of June 2023. And we're streaming live from the studio in central Trinidad and Tobago, streaming live on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube. Wherever you are viewing this, make sure to hit that like button, double tap that screen if you're over there on TikTok, hit the like button, drop a comment, share the video if you are interested in doing that kind of thing. Get more people inside of the live to join the discussion, to listen out to what we're talking about. And we're starting talking today. Someone messaged me and then they wrote it in a comment also, talking about the fact that Russia is right now mulling the idea or suggesting or proposing the idea of not requiring visas from Trinidad and Tobago, along with several other CARICOM, Caribbean and Latin American countries, not needing visas from us to go into Russia. And I think it's a strategic move. I think it's linked to the moves that both Russia and China are making on the global stage right now. You see, for a very long time, the United States for a very long time, the United States maintained that global hegemony. But as many people are saying there, who going there? No thanks, that place is so cold. Canada is cold and many people still go to Canada. So I think this is what Russia and maybe China is attempting to do. The United States, the Western world, for a very long time has been the shining pearl on the global stage. Everyone wants to go there. And I think Russia and China are beginning to realize the benefits that the United States has been able to accrue over the years because of this. And China hasn't been going necessarily that visa direction, but for a very long time now, China has been making this battle one that they're focused on. You see, one of the main reasons the United States has a lot of power is because the US dollar is needed all around the world. That's one of the main reasons. The US dollar is a widely needed currency around the world. If you want to trade in most countries, you need US dollars. So that makes the US dollar in and of itself a valuable resource. And this is a resource that the United States can print. So for nearly every other nation in the world, their valuable resource needs work done. People need to do work to create this valuable resource. While in the United States case, the valuable resource that every other country needs, namely the US dollar, all they need to do is basically print it. And I mean, that's oversimplifying to some extent, but for all intents and purposes, that's what it is. That creates an imbalance, obviously. If you see, the United States seems like their wealth comes a lot easier than many other places in the world. That's part of the reason why. Everywhere in the world needs to work, create resources in order to procure a resource that the United States could just print. Many other countries are battling this. And recently, Afreximbank, a bank promising to allow Africa to trade without the US dollar inside of Africa, has been making some forward movements. You see, for a long time now, if African countries wanted to trade inside of Africa, they had to get US currency. I want to sell sweet potatoes that I grew in Trinidad to a Tobagonian, and I have to sell my sweet potatoes for US dollars in order to buy something from the Tobagonian. Exactly, Roni. But why? But why? And this is what the Afreximbank is looking to do. You see, what the US was able to do is every country could use this US dollar as a way to balance something. So as an African country, I may not trust your currency. So Zimbabwe has $1 billion notes. So I may not trust the Zimbabwean currency, and it may be a little fickle. They may have a corrupt leader sometime who may do something strange with it. I don't want to hold on to your Zimbabwean dollars. So here's what. Switch your Zimbabwean dollars to US dollars. The US dollars are more safe and secure. I would work with that. That's why people would use the US dollar. But now with this bank securing this trade, they are able to now bypass the US dollar. And It's not something that was actually done by Africa alone. Let's dive into the history of this. If we go back as far back in time as 2012. This first article I'm reading here is 2012. Crucial China role for African Export-Import Bank. Since 2012. With more than $126 billion in trade with Africa, China has surpassed the United States to become the continent's largest trade partner. Again, this is since 2012. The rank is reflected in the annual meeting of shareholders of the African Export-Import Bank, now underway in Beijing. Beijing is in China. So, the shareholders of the Afrexim Bank, their meeting since 2012 was in China. Okay. Jean-Louis Ekra, chairman and president of Afrexim Bank, told a press conference on Monday that the meeting will review the bank's operations over the past year and look for new opportunities for the continent. The bank, they spoke here that the bank, it's no secret to anybody that over the past 30 years, China has become stronger and stronger as a player in the international economic area, he said. From our perspective, it is a good thing that the world is diversifying. China Exim Bank is a major shareholder in Afrexim Bank as one of the non-African institutions, but Ekra said that it is only to a limited extent. So the China Exim Bank already invested in Afrexim since 2012. All right, we're going on. More news. 2018 here. China Development Bank, Afrexim in $500 million agreement to support Africa's trade infrastructure. So this is more money from China into this bank. China Development Bank yesterday in Changsha, China, signed an agreement providing a $500 million facility to the African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim, to enable the African Trade Finance Bank support trade-enabling infrastructure projects across the continent. Moving across again, further into time. In 2019, Afrexim secures second China Exim-backed term loan. The Afrexim Bank has closed a US $500 million 5-year syndicated term loan guaranteed by the Export-Import Bank of China, China Exim. So China Exim invested again. So that's quite a number of times. That China invested in this bank. And I think that most of this investment that China was doing to take areas when they cannot pay back, I wouldn't doubt that some of it has that foreclosure idea on it, where, you know, if the African nations cannot repay, then it's owned by China to some extent. Yes, I wouldn't doubt that. But some of this is the long game. It's the long game against the United States. All countries should be allowed to trade with their own currency backed by their own resource. That sounds beautiful in theory, but there are corrupt people out there. You know, it's about trust. It's about trust. Like, think about it. It's about trust. If I'm going to buy something from Venezuela, and they're giving me the Venezuelan currency and promising me that the Venezuelan currency is going to be backed by the Venezuelan oil, and then a year down the road they switch the Venezuelan currency and they no longer accept the old cotton Venezuelan currency. Remember, a certain country did just that same thing. It's not impossible for countries to do that, and that a year on now, your currency is now of no value. You see, it's about trust. That's why so many people go straight back to gold, because gold, no one could print it. You could test to see if my gold is valuable. There's only so much. It's known to be valuable throughout time. It's something that I don't need to trust you. You don't need to trust me. We trust the gold. Nathan, who the Trinidadian government supports the most, China or the US? Generally speaking, the US. We are closer to the United States than China, but we play a tiptoeing game also, where we are not very unfriendly to China either. So you mean to tell me if I travel with 10 million TT dollars in America, it's worthless? So unfair. No, it's not worthless. That's not true. That's not true. You could exchange some currencies in some places. Some places accept some currencies, but it's not like it will be universally accepted. It's not like it would be accepted any and every way. There are places in the United States where you could go and they would accept a trade of your TT dollars for US dollars, and then you use the US dollars to pay for what you want. So it's just how it is. It's the nature of things. And I mean, you might say it's unfair, but when you understand that money itself is not value, money is a representative of a value. And the reason that you see governments printed on a value on money, or you see in times of old you saw kings or emperors printed on the money, it's because the money was supposed to be backed by the authority. That's how people could trust this money. And you want people to trust the money. If I come to you with money with MindFULL printed on it, I printed out some money with MindFULL on it, and I come to you with some of it, and I give you it in a stack, and I tell you, give me some goods for it. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that because you don't trust that you could take this MindFULL dollar and carry it somewhere else and redeem the value. It's about trust. And it might be unfair that larger countries and more powerful establishments command more trust, but that's just the reality. Larger countries, larger establishments command more trust. That's just reality. The American printer is probably the most valuable thing. Probably, but the Afrexim Bank may be hitting a shot to that. Afrexim launches Africa Trade Gateway, a single window for digital services. This is from the 21st of June this year. The African Export-Import Bank yesterday in Accra launched the African Trade Gateway, ATG, a suite of 5 digital platforms that have been designed as a single window, to enable the bank better deliver on its mandate by providing critical services to support and promote African trade and the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So there are different aspects to this entire thing, starting with Mansa, Africa's due diligence. Now listen to what they are providing here, and basically if you could break this down to say that this is what China provided to Africa. And I could see how China would benefit from this in the long run too, even if their intentions are not malevolent, evil. So this is what they are providing here. Mansa, Africa's due diligence platform, provides a single source of primary data required for the conduct of customer due diligence on African entities, financial institutions, corporates, and SMEs. It also provides complementary collection of information on investment in Africa, country profiles, and traded product services of African countries. Okay, so what this gives you is a breakdown of information on African business. So, okay, you might not know about this small or medium-sized enterprise inside Africa, and you might not trust it. You don't know the information is reliable on it. Okay, well, they have a platform that you could go on the Afrexim Bank and look up some of these companies, and you could do your due diligence there. It's like, I guess, a kind of Yellow Pages combined with what was this thing? Yelp. Yelp was the Yelp reviews business, like a kind of Yellow Pages combined with the Yelp in a kind of way. That opens up African businesses and small businesses through the internet to not only the entirety of the African continent, which is about 1 billion people, but also to international businesses too. It would be much more easy to do international business if you could understand what's going on in there. That's basically like Alibaba, yes, Dream Chaser. What Alibaba did to those corporations and factories inside even remote China. You could go inside of remote China and order a piece of machinery from some factory behind a mountain inside of China through Alibaba. And the Chinese, through their investments, provided somewhat of the same thing to Africans here. That's only one branch of the 5 areas they're providing here. Yes, they are quite rich, and they are also part of Afrexim, just by the way. PAPS, PAPSS, was established to enable efficient payment for intra-African trade in national currencies, promoting intra-African trade, minimizing risk, and contributing to financial integration across Africa. In July 2019, African Union heads of state meeting in Niamey adopted PAPS as the payment and settlement system to support implementation of the African free trade. It currently operates out of Cairo. That's in Egypt. So this is one of the main areas here. This allows African countries to trade in their national currencies. You don't need to switch to US. You don't need to figure out some conversion rate. You use this directly and you can buy and sell in national currencies. It all based on proper management, of course, Mr. Boss, of course, as everything is. Why can't the Caribbean operate with one economic bloc like Africa? Remember positive radiation? That idea was tried before. Remember 1 from 10 means 0? I don't know if you remember that quote, but that's a famous Caribbean quote where we attempted to federalize the entirety of the Caribbean. One of the difficult things, and we see it even in the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago. We see it in the relationship even between Trinidad and Tobago. When you have groups that are attempting to work together, and there are differentials of power, differentials of wealth, you're going to seem like you're leaning more on one than the other. When you open up free trade, when you open up free movement, you see that the movement is heavily in one side. So it gets difficult. It's not as straightforward as it seems. The aim for this bank isn't necessarily to unify the African continent on that more political level, but to offer an economic kind of unification where you don't need to rely on people wanting to behave in a unified one heart way. No, you depend on capitalism. It's a capitalist free market kind of idea. People would like to trade with each other, and we provide the opportunity, we provide the market resources for them to be able to carry on that trade. Now, one Caribbean currency, I also think that's going to be a difficult thing to adopt. It is. If you have one Caribbean currency, shopping in Trinidad and Tobago is going to be much different than shopping in whichever is going to be the most poverty-stricken Caribbean country. It's going to have some imbalances. It's always going to do it. And because you already have free and independent territories, now to try and get them to give up their sovereignty, their economic sovereignty for one Caribbean currency, I don't think that's necessarily the way to go. One trading area may work if we were able to do something like the Afrexim and able to trade in our currencies like that. I think it would make much more sense. When we use to export and import, government closing everything we have, what Trinidad still trading? We do trade quite a bit. If this works for Africa like it did for China, this will change the world. I agree. It will change the world. And the other things that they're offering are basically those business services, B2B, where businesses could interact with each other. There's a members platform where people could join as a member and gain membership benefits, be able to access and get access to businesses inside of Africa and all of that. If Afrexim goes along as the African nations promise it can, I think the United States and the US dollar may be in for quite a lash. America will go to war for that dollar. Well, if you see all of a sudden that Africa suddenly needs democracy more than ever, you know why. And the thing is, the colonialism, the benefits that come from using China and Russia are a bit different from the benefits that come from using the United States. The United States over the last 40 years have used their global influence, and they have begun to squeeze on countries more and more. So China is investing in the Afrexim Bank, but they are not insisting that the African countries adopt the one-child policy or adopt aspects of Maoism or of Maoist communism in China. While a lot of the US help does come hinged and contingent on adopting certain US policies. And as, was it Ghana, showed, many of the African countries are not interested in necessarily adopting US social policies. And if your assistance comes linked with that, and now there are other large players in the world field that are willing to help without showing that there's a contingent link to it. You understand? Some people may be listening. Ghana isn't the country that was supposed to be blessed with oil wealth. I'm not sure. The UN, WHO, elites, globalists, WF, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, etc. in control, and W is about buyout countries. Okay, Julie Jew, okay. You know, I do believe in some conspiracies. I do believe some conspiracies are real. I do believe that there are evil people out there trying to do things, but humans don't work that well together, you know. Like some of the plans that some people ascribe to human beings and their ability, I think we overestimate certain people's abilities. I don't trust those globalist elites, as you put them. I don't trust them, but I don't think they are in control of every single thing. I think sometimes people give them too much power. They speak as if they are really so much in control, and they are not. They are not. Many individuals have a lot of control. And what I think is essential is that people don't give up their control. People don't give up their control. That's what happens very regularly. People think that they don't have much control, and while thinking so, they actually give up the control that they do have. Like the guy was speaking about last night, and speaking about what in a country like ours, what we need is to have a national policy on sexual education and move away from the backward thinking of these denominational boards, because they have abstinence only as their remedies, etc. So we have to get a more progressive. You see things like that? That's giving up your power. And it's easy to find good reason to give up your power. You know, it's easy to find good reason. Like, you know, there's a global pandemic happening that could kill millions of people. So these authorities, they know what's best to do. So let's give up more power to them to allow them to really be able to make the decisions that are necessary to conquer this global threat. Really, I'm sorry, I don't trust those people like that. I really don't. And I refuse to give up the individual freedoms and rights and powers that I have, even if it seems like there's something really dangerous out there. I mean, freedom has risk. That's the nature of it. That's the very nature of it. And if you're someone extremely risk averse, you're always worried about risk, it will be very easy to scare you into losing your freedom. You know, I gave this example before. I remember I had a dog, a bull terrier, favorite dog, you know, Oreo. She's currently sleeping underground in my garden, supplying nutrients to some of my trees. But yes, I had a dog, and I had a neighbor with some chickens that would free roam in their yard, and there was a fence between the yards. The chickens were not at risk from my dog, but it was a chain link fence. They could see each other. They could see each other through the fence. And these chickens are free on that side. But the dog, my dog, was a very clever dog. She would go and jump at the fence and shake it and back at the fence, get the chickens frightened. And those foolish, stupid chickens would get worried, flap their wings, fly over the fence and fly into our yard. And well, you could guess what happens there. I now owe the neighbor a chicken. And that's what happens sometimes. The freedom, you could get scared while you're in a free area. Oh no, there's a lot of teenage pregnancy out there. Make sure you give state the control over all the sexual education, etc., etc., etc. And then voila, we end up as Canada or California, and we're wondering, how on earth did the state get the ability to decide what happens in the privacy of everyone's family home? How did the state get that ability? So, okay, we don't like abusers. We don't think parents should beat their children to death. Of course, that should not happen. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give the state the power to go inside a home. And if the neighbor calls the state and tells the state that the parent is beating the child, the state could go in there and take that child because we don't want abuse. Okay? Let's see where that leads. Now, the state determines that if you do not give your girl child hormones, testosterone hormones, when she says that she's a boy, and let her remove her mammary glands as soon as they start to grow and sterilize her from the age of 13, if you do not do that, then you are abusing your child and the state could take away your child from you there. That's where that led to. Because somehow we believed that because there are abusive parents, that somehow the state is going to be more caring for children than parents in general. The reality of abusive parents doesn't mean that we should sacrifice the independent authority of parenting. You see, it's a balance. The state that they all hate, so give them more power. It's something that's so confusing to me and Aroni. That you have no idea how confusing that is to me. You would ask someone, do you trust the government? And in Trinidad and Tobago, it's not very difficult to do. You know how Trinidad and Tobago politics are generally set up. You're in Trinidad, if someone is leaning towards UNC, you ask them, do you trust Dr. Rowley? No, but that Bobby head, no, okay. If they're leaning towards PNM, do you trust Cameron? No, that old thief, that drunk, okay, so you do not trust them. Why would you want to give them more power though? So like you'd hear people talk about there are too many cars on the nation road. You know, the government should start to ban cars and I'm like, are you listening to yourself? You know, the government isn't some nebulous entity that has perfect morality and it's turned on by God and it runs the country in perfection like that. The government is those people, the people that you just said you don't trust. Shanna Star says, and they wanted me to make my boy child in America, in a country that anything goes. You know, I think about that. You hear people talking about, you know, the benefits of the United States and the benefits of Canada, and I'm like, are you all sure that you all know all of those benefits? Are you sure that you have listened, learned, read enough on it? For the cheap fast food, would that lengthen your life? Or would you just get overweight and obese? I mean, you know, you have to weigh where your benefits are. But that's the problem continually that we must always look at. Yes, when you're thinking about the state, the government doing something to help, consider it is power you're giving them. You're giving them power. And do you want the government to have this power? But morning show host said the CS could exile in Canada. The Chiefs, they looked at it with a cookie eye. Yeah, some people do. And I think those are serious issues. And in Trinidad, we are facing them. I saw the Roman Catholic Archbishop came out, and the issue that I've been speaking about numerous days now, the Concordat, where we currently have the Ministry of Education and the religious boards, the denominational school boards, in a bit of back and forth over the Concordat, because the ministry is trying to get the ministry to select the teachers that go into the primary schools, and the religious boards are saying, no, we get a selection on a certain percentage of the teachers that we want in our schools, and we are insisting on that. To me, I want it to remain like the Concordat has it. I do not think it's the state's place. I do not want the state involved there. Yeah. If there are no further comments or questions, I think I could take an earlier night tonight, you know. Some of these nights you went real late. So any further comments or questions in the live? Love covers a multitude of sins. Positive radiation. I like that. I like that verse, bro. I like that verse. Quote that good book, brother. Quote that good book. What's your take on the issue? On which issue in specific? Which issue do you mean? You're talking about the books in schools, the books in the bookstore, the entire LGBTQ community, the what exactly? Canada blocked people accounts for protesting vaccines. Yes, they did. Yes, they blocked people's bank accounts for protesting vaccine mandates. No, I did not see the questionnaire, Ronnie. I haven't seen it yet, and that's that's the part I've always been saying. I don't know what to say about the school part, because I don't know what's the fact on it. I heard the ministry deny it, but I don't know what's the fact on the books particularly. Well, I think the books should not exist because LGBTQIAA2+ regards sexuality. And I do not think it's the place of strangers to introduce sexuality to children. I do not think it's their place. And it's not the same thing as providing information. You can provide information on reproduction, on sexual, on human biology. But providing the how to and where to and how you should and how you could, that's not the place of an adult. That is not the parent of a child to be informing a child of. That's not their place. However, I am on the more free side when it comes to speech. So I think once there isn't prohibitive language that involves pedophilia inside of the book, then a bookstore should be free to carry the book if they want. That's up to the bookstore. They could carry whichever legal book they are willing to do so with. I think, though, the response, not the carrying of the book in and of itself, the response where they said the day after they posted Tuesday motivation or some kind of thing like that, and they posted the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. That's the reason I have no interest in purchasing from that store again. That is the reason, not the carrying of the books in and of itself, but you're carrying the books. The population reacts because people are bothered because of the child aspect of it, not because of the and the thing is, people speak like Trinidad is such a myopic backward society when it comes to these things, and it's not true. We have justices high in our legal system that everyone knows is out there doing the most. Much of our popular culture, we have celebrities in our popular culture that everyone knows is doing the most, and it doesn't stop them from being popular in the Trinidad and Tobago culture. And there are people who would be watching those very same influencers online who are also angry about the book. And it's not that it's not necessarily that they are being hypocrites, but they are saying that this is adult business. It doesn't belong in the children's sphere. And for the bookstore to see their customers make this complaint, and you basically see, I don't give a so and so. My view is, okay, that's how you take your customers. You don't need those customers. That book isn't an educated book. There's a petition to be signed. Muslim Ummah is in front of the Ministry of Education. I saw that. It alleged MPs to CS2. Hey. Hey, I don't know about that. I don't know who doing what in the privacy of their home. I don't know. All I know is I don't think such things should be introduced to children. And it has nothing to do with reproduction. Reproduction, and you see, when people try to equivocate heterosexuality with homosexuality and LGBTQIA2 plus such, etc., it is not one and the same. One is how natural human reproduction occurs. It is part of a biological process. One has to do with kink, how humans pleasure themselves. And I mean, you could have a moral stance that you could pleasure yourself in any way you see fit. That's your moral stance. But you cannot think that it's right for you to determine other people's moral stance and such. They can't provide proper sex education for adults, but they want to tell people, children, they can be a boy or girl. It's not proper. I don't think that's proper. I don't think that's the place of a state. I hold that position. It is not the place of a state. And when the state gets into that, we see things go awry constantly because they're overstepping their bounds. And they cannot handle that. They do not know how to handle that. You see, if the state is the controller of the sexuality of children, why wouldn't perverts just go into those jobs? Just as some people allege that some religious leaders very well do. But in the religious aspect, their battles with morality are documented and basically held the same for thousands of years. So you could look at the religious view on morality and it's been the same for thousands of years. You could say, okay, this view has worked, hasn't worked. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a bad idea. Putting that on the state, where the state policy could change month over month, you do not want the basis of your country's and society's morality to be something that could change month over month. That gets scary. So a boy can go in a girl's toilet if he decides to be a girl. Not in Trinidad, but there are places where that does happen. And boys who identify as girls, they compete in girls' sports, they change in the girls' locker rooms. And for those of us who have been athletes in sport, you understand that a locker room is something way different from a toilet. You could use a toilet, especially on the girls' side. I mean, on the boys' side, in schools, I don't know how many schools still have it, but in the boys' side, I call it the pee trough. You all know the pee trough, where you get the communal peeing session as boys in schools. We could all bond while peeing. And in my school, some chap wrote your future is in your hands on the wall right there. You all know the pee trough, where, you know, you're all open there. If you all went to school in Trinidad and Tobago, many schools, probably most schools have it. But in the girls section, you know, you have your stalls. It's not necessarily that exposed. But a locker room is something different. If you're changing for sports, very regularly, the entire team may change in front of each other. Rooney says we didn't have stalls. What? So what you all had? Oh, you talking about showers? I want to know how in a female toilet you all don't have stalls. How else you all gonna do that? So you all just go sit there and watch each other? That would be very weird. So just now that will be a subject. I don't know. Trinidad, one of the benefits of Trinidad, and the Catholic Archbishop spoke to this today. I believe he spoke about that. The benefits, one of the benefits in Trinidad is that concordat. The concordat that assures the denominational boards have a good bit of authority over how their schools are run. And denominational boards, religions are one of the more sure ways to resist changing social norms. Because religious texts, by and large, remain the same. They're not supposed to change, at least. So if I decide to be the prime minister, I kind of goes, no, you cannot. You may be shot. What was the outcome of the petition after Miss Barrett murder? The petition for what was the petition for again? I can't even remember what was the intention of that petition. Did you see the movie What is a Woman by Matt Walsh? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Alarming stuff, but if you're paying attention to what is happening around the world, it's not totally surprising. You know, I don't know if any one of you are friends with me on Facebook. If you were friends with me on Facebook over the last couple of years, since like 2006, 2009 or so on Facebook. I was on Facebook since 2007. Since like 2009, 2010, I've been posting every now and again an article, and I would say, what a time to be alive. Watching the progression of a lot of these things. What a time to be alive. If you go search Nathan Springer, it has always been there, fermenting and growing stronger and stronger. And the idea that anyone who speaks against anything is a hateful, bigoted person is one of the ways that they kill discussion on the topic. So you are not allowed to question something because it would make you hateful and bigoted. I disagree. I will question whatever it is. And I am uncancelable. I don't need a government job. No one employs me in that way. So if you ask me, I'm going to answer you. And I'm saying it very clearly. If they attempt to bring this nonsense into Trinidad, because certain aspects of this is quite plainly just nonsense. It does not make sense. There's no logical basis for it. The same people that say you are born this way being homosexual or heterosexual, you are born being attracted to male or female, those same people say that there is no difference between male or female. Those two things are not logically congruent. No, I am not. It's crazy. A lot regret it. A lot say their parents push them for fame. Yes, that has happened. So true. To be honest, I know a doctor who told me many of them come back. Yes, many of them do come back, and many of them do regret it. And the absolutely evil part about it now is that the T side of the entire agenda, the T side basically causes irreversible change. Even if you reach 25 and change your mind about decisions you made when you were 13, it's irreversible. You have now sterilized a generation. That's evil. Quick question, you're going to check out the Titanic if you had the cash? I mean, it's just, no, I'm not Dream Chaser. No, I am not at all. You know, was it the director Cameron, what's his first name? Something Cameron. He went down to the Titanic something like 10 times or something like that, using a $10 million vessel. Like, bro, if I'm a billionaire and I want to go down to the Titanic, so you all have to, Dave Cameron, you all have to make me something impregnable. I'm not going through that. I'm not going through that. I'm not going there and if you thing run by a Logitech controller, like, bro, a Logitech controller. I remember gaming on my computer with a Logitech controller, and occasionally it falls apart. Occasionally a knob stops working. Sometimes you're using the digital and you notice one of the knobs stick. You have to switch over to analog. And I'm going down to the bottom of the sea, 2 miles down in the sea. With that, sir, no thank you. I'm sorry, no. Rooney, good question. Very good question. I don't know. Some people are just adventurous like that, and the risk to some people is part of the adventure itself. I'm trying to find the name of the book. Do you know it? The book that is in Trinidad, I Am a Rainbow. I believe is the name of the book. And you know, part of the disturbing part with this, like people within the community are saying that it's not about trying to convert anyone or change anyone's mind or something like that. But the book says I am a rainbow and goes through, I believe, the story of a Hawaiian man or something like that coming out to his family and gaining acceptance. I am a rainbow. And then at the back of the book, it says, you are a rainbow too. What does that mean? If you are not trying to encourage more people into it, what does that mean? How many other religions are anti-LGBTQ? Most religions, if you ask most religious scholars, they're by and large anti-LGBTQ in the main. You see, if you are, I have to be careful how I say this too, but LGBTQ does not propagate itself. You understand what I'm saying? It does not propagate itself. A society that goes more than 50% LGBTQ is going to die within a generation or two. And in modern times, where due to the progress of hospital and medical technology, etc., and we have a much longer life expectancy, not as many people die young and all of that, people could feel like, you know, well, we have too many people on earth anyway, so that doesn't matter. But in societies of old, and bear in mind what religions, you have to understand how most religions were developed. Religions were developed as a way of life, as trying to figure out how do we best live life, because life has infinite things you could do. We exist in infinite choice. There are infinite different decisions we can make in life. So religions attempt to map out a framework of what is best. How do we best live this life? And if a religion was successful, a successful religion has to be one that people could follow, and they will live and reproduce and stay alive through time. So a religion that promotes things that do not propagate people, a religion like that will by default die out on its own. There are two boys who are friends, and one of them kissed the other, and they were both confused, and they don't know what or how to explain how they feel for each other. They can't pass down their beliefs to their own, so they pass it down to others. I've heard a quote, they say Marxists, and they say Marxists because a lot of these ideologies were growthed or grown out of the academy and Marxism being studied in the university. A lot of them were grown out of that. And there's a quote that says, Marxists don't have children, they have yours. And the thing is, many of the people with this kind of belief structure, so you go through the right now in Trinidad and Tobago, the people who are most upset about the fact that parents are upset about this book. Look at the people who are counter upset, the people who are upset that the parents are upset, the people who are calling parents bigots, who are saying that Trinidad is backward. Look at many of those people and go through their profiles and see where a lot of them are. Many of them are within the media sphere, within the HR or government sphere, or within teaching. Those three areas. Media, HR, government, and teaching. And the United States realized this. Support for some of these causes among engineering, among architecture, among construction, among the trades, among hard labor. Support for a lot of these movements is minimal. But support for a lot of these movements is in the high 90s in certain spheres. Within the media, there are lots of people who went to study media studies and learned gender studies also, learned Marxism basically. And they came out believing that their job in the media is to change and shape the national narrative, to progress this country. They're progressives. That's what they're attempting to do. They're activists in the media. Then HR and government. HR and government is another area where a lot of people employed in that area were educated into liberal gender studies, etc. So they go into HR and government areas and they try to execute these kinds of ideologies there. And finally, teaching. So all of these areas, although they may be a minority of the society, they are influential areas. So the people who have most of the children, conservative people by and large in every country ever existed anywhere, are the majority of the parents. Obviously. When you have a child, you become more conservative. That's known. If you want to become more conservative, make a child. You want to become even more conservative, make a next one. Generally how it goes. So, but the parents, the people who generally are not as far out on the end of beliefs, are the ones that go into the most influential areas, like media, HR, government, and teaching. So we have people who are ideologically possessed with views. I don't believe anybody could come for me like that. They could try if they want. They could try the best. Who are ideologically possessed, and they're out there. Their purpose is to impart their views on the wider society. I'm not worried. I'm not worried even in the least. I'm not worried even in the least. And I've said it before. For example, I've said it before. I was in favor of decriminalizing buggery in Trinidad and Tobago because I don't believe someone should go to prison for being kinky. Even if I think the kink is sinful. And you know, the thing I find so strange that people are upset with religious people about ascribing sin and wrong somewhere. That's what religious people do. You know, if someone is a Christian and they think homosexuality is a sin, you know, they think if you have sex outside of marriage, that's a sin too. It's not like it's one thing, it's what they do. Yeah, folks. Any further questions or comments before I dive out on this Friday evening? They charged me $600 to register my child and I got a ribbon? What? Leave me at one child. I mean, it's up to you. Or in primary school. I mean, yeah, how much children you have is your choice. I'll speak as for what I think. I think one ain't enough. When our children are prepared for a natural disaster like a hurricane, I mean, who is really prepared? Who is really prepared? Who is? I think though that some people think Trinidad is more unprepared than we are. If you look at the homes in Trinidad and Tobago, many of the homes in Trinidad and Tobago are pretty well built compared to many other areas in the world. Trinidad has a lot of steel roofs, and I mean, some of them might have been built by men who didn't know totally what they were doing, but by and large, many houses in Trinidad, any house built within the last 20 years, has, generally speaking, some kind of measure to counteract for hurricanes, and not all islands are the same like that. So I think some people exaggerate how badly off we might be. Ren says, I live in a ply house. Bro, if hurricane coming, dive out. Dive out if hurricane coming. Dive out. Yes, Roni. There's food. No shame in that, Ren. I didn't say that as in being a shameful thing. I just said that in terms of being a safe thing. In terms of if it's a hurricane, it's not very safe to be inside of a ply house. No shame in that. That's what you can afford. But if there's a hurricane coming, dive out. Go to somewhere else. Go to a shelter. No shame in living in what you can afford. No shame in that. And you know, it's a point that I speak about in terms of the laws, etc. in Trinidad. Like, if we have a law in Trinidad that says you can't live in a house unless it's properly well built to withstand a hurricane. Are you saying that people who can't afford to build such a house, they just have to live in squalor? They have to remain homeless? If you paid $1 million to stop speak about the LGBTQ agenda online, would you stop? Who paying me? Is that an offer? And is it in the US? And I don't know. I will not take that offer because I'm almost sure that offer is going to come with all kinds of negative things. See those landlords who renting Matchbox. Hey people, it's been nice. It's 11:03. If there are no further questions or comments, that's all I have for now. This has been the Mindful Live. I'm Nathan Spring. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained. Roni, I will not. I'm with you on that, Ren. I'm with you on that. I hope you do get through doing exactly that. Yes, Nisi, that's it. You get accustomed to these lives going after 12. A brother needs sleep. So, that's all I have for now. As I said, I'll be educated, informed, or entertained. I'll see you guys again for the next Mindful Live session, which is going to be next week, Monday. We aren't doing the lives on the weekend. You know, that's not how it goes. No lives on the weekend. So until then, I will see you guys around 9:30 for that next live coming next week, Monday. I hope you all enjoy your weekend. It was nice. Hit that like button if you're looking at this on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button. This has been brought to you by Mindful Education. We have our educational camp starting in the vacation here in the Java period. If you are interested, if you have a student, we're doing from preschool all the way to CXC every single day. The sessions are around 2 hours per day. 400 for any week. You don't have to start at the first week. You don't have to go all the weeks. You could do any 1 week. You could do any 2 weeks. You could do all of the weeks if you are so interested. We're doing the weeks going through Java. If you are interested in joining that, hit us up. Mindful Education, the Java educational camp, is starting in the vacation. Come learn. I assure you your students would learn in it. And we don't have books like Your Rainbow. We don't teach that. We're teaching STEM, English, communication. All right, people. Laters. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Peace. I'm out.